All right, class, buckle up. Today we're going to be diving into the OG influencers of the food world. So, farmers of ancient times. No, they weren't making TikToks, but they were definitely changing the world by domesticating plants and animals. So, we're going to get into it now. All right, so agriculture has changed a lot over time. So, thanks to cultural diffusion and technology back in the day, people didn't just do DoorDash for their meals. They had to figure out how to grow their food themselves. Today, we learn more about plants and animals, when they were first domesticated, and how they spread across the world. So, yes, we're basically talking about food history world tour. All right, so before we had all agriculture, people were out there living their best hunter gatherer lives, which sounds cool until you realize that it meant spending all day chasing animals and hoping you didn't starve. So then came domestication. People started farming, and suddenly food was a little bit more reliable. Root crops like yams or seed crops like wheat changed everything. So we're going to talk about Carl Sauer a little, and imagine a geographer who really cared about how people started farming. He believed in agriculture and began in places with plenty of food and biodiversity. Makes sense. So if you're going to experiment with farming, you probably don't want to start in the desert. All right, so this is a map of a table that shows the time period, the location, the type of crops, and the early diffusion patterns where they happened. So this is where kind of food and the idea of agriculture and farming for your own food started and then spread. All right, so the domestication, where did the agriculture actually start? Well, it didn't just pop up in one place. Different regions developed farming independently. So we're going to break that down a little bit. The Fertile Crescent was wheat and barley, and basically the ancient grain bowls. Southeast Asia were mangoes and coconuts. So imagine ancient tropical smoothies. And East Asia was rice. Shout out to your favorite sushi ingredient. And sub Saharan Africa were yams and coffee because even ancient people needed caffeine. Mesoamerica was corn and potatoes, so Taco Tuesday owes a lot to these farmers. All right, so technological advancements. Early farmers weren't just planting seeds and hoping for the best. They domesticated animals too. So cows, pigs, and chickens weren't just barnyard mascots. They provided food, labor, and materials. Plus, early humans invented tools, making farming easier. So imagine farming with your hands. Yeah, no, thank you. All right, so the diffusion of agriculture. Once people figured out farming, they didn't keep it a secret. Seeds and animals spread, and farmers moved and traded. Think of it like the original food delivery system, but instead of Uber Eats, it had trade routes. All right, so next we're going to talk about the patterns of diffusion, such as the Columbian Exchange and agriculture revolutions that resulted in global spread of various plants and animals. All right, so the major herds of agriculture led to the first urban centers, which grew into first civilizations, large societies within cities, and powerful states. Civilizations brought increased trade, larger empires, and conquest, and the diffusion paths of ancient world were somewhat expansive given the transportation technology of the time. So we really went everywhere, even though the way to get there was probably the most difficult and worst trip of your life. So, for example, the Roman Empire reached its peak around 200 CE, and as it stretched from England to North Africa and Southwest Asia, the Middle East today, the Silk Road trade routes kind of connected Rome with China, and people added silk, rice, and other goods, and it became the first. Sort of internet system. Everybody met new people, you bought new foods, you can try new things, and it was a great way to sell and buy from everywhere all over the world. All right, so the Columbian Exchange, I am going to post this video because I want you guys to watch it. So it's going to be one of your bell ringer videos or your classwork videos. So fast forward to 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue and accidentally starts one of the biggest food swaps in history. The Columbian Exchange brought potatoes to Europe, sugarcane to the Americas, and unfortunately, diseases everywhere. This is why your fries and your sugar loaded coffee exist today. All right, so sugarcane. Speaking of sugar, explorers and colonizers spread sugarcane like influencers spread trends. If you've ever had a sugary snack, you can thank the global diffusion of this crop. Unfortunately, this also led to the rise in plantations and slavery. Not all agricultural diffusion had positive effects, but it did lead eventually to sugar being mass produced and being something that we use every day almost constantly. All right. Not really sure why this screen came up the way it did, but I will read it out to you so that you know exactly what it's supposed to be saying. All right, so we're going to talk about potatoes for a second. This is the MVP of global cuisine. The Andean people domesticated them, but first, thanks to Columbian Exchange, potatoes became a staple in Europe. So, fun fact, potatoes became so important in Ireland that a potato disease caused a whole famine in the 1800s. Yes, hundreds of people died because, actually, it was more than hundreds. It was probably thousands of people died because of the potato famine. So, I'm going to read off the stuff off of this slide because for whatever reason, it got cut off. So there's over 4,000 varieties of potatoes that exist in the Andes. And the potato diffused from South American Andean culture herd to other continents during the Columbian Exchange. European colonizers brought potatoes back to Europe and it spread to other parts of the world like Asia and Africa. The new basic food for workers. So the new introduction of potatoes in various regions served as a new basic food source for workers, contributing to widespread cultivation and consumption. All right, so the effects of later diffusion. Once again, this slide got messed up, so I will read it out to you. First column, all the way to the left, it says global expansion of sugar production. Colonizing countries played significant role in expanding the production of consumption of sugar worldwide through trade and manufacturing. The middle one should say trade systems with tropical regions, and they established trade systems connecting regions with tropical climates, such as Southeast Asia, facilitating the diffusion of sugarcane. And last column says colonial agricultural practices. They grew specific crops like sugarcane within their territorial possessions, contributing to the spread of sugarcane cultivation to more areas. So, answering to the high demand of sugar and rum byproduct of sugar. All right, so what I was going to say on this slide is that the European powers expanded. They started planting cash crops in colonies. This is why tropical areas today grow things like sugar, coffee, bananas for export. A high demand of the sugar and rum fueled colonial economies. And yes, pirates were involved, but that's a lesson for another day. All right, so that is it. We're going to bring it back for a second. Agriculture didn't just appear in one day, it evolved through many hearths. So it was spread globally and shaped civilization. So next time you eat fries or drink coffee, remember you're enjoying the result of thousands of years of agricultural diffusion. As always, do not forget to do your bell ringers, your classwork, and your reviews, and I will see you back in class.